Hi, welcome to episode 323 of your favorite daily podcast, A Couple of Things, a podcast about things. Today, I'm going to talk about something that I've talked about a lot that I'm surprised I haven't talked about on this podcast, called technological accessibility. Let's get into it. This is a UX/tech episode. So when I was racking my brain about what to talk about today, because you guys, I had zero things on my mind today. I'm just so busy with school. Um, I thought about this topic and I was like, seems like I've spoken about this before. So I searched through all 320 something episodes of this podcast and I realized that I actually have not spoken about technological accessibility. And that is a surprise. I've even talked about this. I've written a whole guide about it, but I haven't spoken about it on the podcast. In fact, to be sure, I searched through everything for episodes that had accessibility in them and listened to them to be sure that I actually haven't spoken about this, and I really haven't. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right. So let's get into the topic. So what is technological accessibility? Again, I haven't really seen much about this, and not in the specific terms, but this is how I define it. I define it as the awareness of an experience with technology and technological concepts, as well as the social cultural context that impact how people experience, use, and perceive the internet and related concepts. And I created this like framework around it, um, which I'll go into. This is probably going to be split into two episodes, but I'm going to talk about it more from a UX, specifically UX research point of view. And it's really because, like, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, even though we have become so advanced technologically, I mean, there's AI, which is the hot topic of today. um Millions of people still lack access to digital tools due to gaps and the differences in their cultural and social context. And when you think about it, most of the people who are making the apps and the websites and the tools that we're using more and more often in this increasingly digitally connected world are people who are in quote unquote first world countries, living in cities like Silicon Valley and Amsterdam, with their incredibly expensive iPhones and 24-hour internet connection. And when people are doing research, again focusing on research here, it often excludes people who don't fit into this profile, who are not quote unquote digital natives. And you'll be shocked that there are people who, even in these quote unquote first world countries, also have technology accessibility gaps in their experiences. And so they're stuck with either no access to these things or frustrating experiences when they use these tools. And that is why technological accessibility is important. And I've talked about this on about like the edge case, quote unquote edge case being the best case, because when you design for the edge case, you're designing for everyone. I will link to that in the show notes so I don't need to go over it from the beginning anymore. And generally, like, if you work in tech or if you're exposed to the these kinds of topics, accessibility, inclusion in digital design is not a new thing. But often it's focused on physiological and physical needs. But like I've already talked about, there are a lot of technological accessibility things to consider. And there are three things that I've noticed from my years of doing research, particularly in Nigeria, some other African countries, and also even here in the Netherlands and some other European countries. Um, yeah, three main things that I've noticed that are like impacts technological accessibility. It's one, digital literacy; two, digital access; and three, environmental and cultural context. So, on the digital literacy front, I know I feel like I might have mentioned this before somewhere, but I absolutely hate how the iPhone has so many hidden gestures. It's so irritating. Like, let me know what I'm doing. Why are things hidden? Why is nothing clear? And even the very quote unquote common gestures like, oh, swiping, long pressing, and so on, that we have become so used to, may not actually be known to everyone. Not everyone has that mental model of, oh, you can swipe on the phone or long press things, because maybe their only exposure to the internet is on like an actual computer where you have to click on things or right click. There's no concept of long pressing, for example. Or some people may not even have any kind of access whatsoever. And so they may not know that, oh, to go to the next page I have to swipe left, or I have to long press, or I have to shake the device to undo, because these things are not on the devices that they have the most access to, like your regular standard feature phone. And so I once did a what's it called, usability test ish, with people who had never used a smartphone but they knew about smartphones, they wanted to get smartphones but they had never used them. And even the things that we think are so regular or common, like saving a contact, watching it was so difficult to watch, because the people, they were struggling to complete those tasks, because those things, they seem easy to us but it's apparently not. And there's something Google does which I actually like, which is when you start using a Google device, or when you update your phone, it literally takes you through a guide, like step-by-step guide of the new features, how to use them, what to do. And I think that that's a very good example of accounting for digital literacy in design. um and then there's this video clip that I saw a long time ago. I will link to it in the show notes, where somebody was trying to do a Google search on, the Google home search thing, where it's just the bar. And in your mind, you're like, oh, it's just easy, just type the thing inside. This person really struggled with it. And it was just very enlightening to see that those things that we think are, oh, this is so normal, everyone knows how to do it, it's not really true that everyone knows how to do it. So yeah, that is something to consider if you're designing an app or whatever. Just think about, how can you design it for someone who might not be getting that first time onboarding flow that you have designed for your app, for your voice interaction agents, for whatever, and how can they effectively use that solution. Another thing that I find very interesting is icons. Something I hate is when I'm using a tool and the icons are not labeled. I hate it so much, because why are you assuming that I know what your icon means? And again, I've done a lot of research that sometimes included elements of like the icons. Do people understand what they mean? How do people interpret them? And people actually just ignore things that they're unfamiliar with on interfaces most of the time, because they don't want to break something, and they don't want to, they're not sure if they can undo whatever they do. So if people are ignoring things because they don't understand what it is, that's a bad sign for your product. So carefully consider your icons, ensure that you're not over relying on definitions of icons. And Nielsen Norman actually has an article about this. I will also link to that in the show notes. I hope I remember all the things I'm saying. I'm going to link to in the show notes. But yeah, so like the heart icon can mean so many different things in different contexts and to different people. Recently I learned that what we like, when you do the thumbs up sign for in Nigeria, and I would say maybe most of the Western world, maybe the thumbs up is a good sign. It's like, yes, good, okay. But then in my class, the teacher was showing us the thing, like, oh, interpreting icons and everything, and somebody in the class who's from Iran said that, oh, in their culture, that's actually basically giving someone the middle finger. So be careful about icons, and remember that icons are not universal. Non-universality of icons. Okay, this is getting a bit long. We'll continue tomorrow on digital access and environmental context, and also how to think about applying these things in your design process. Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Couple of Things. If there was anything you found interesting or insightful, or you enjoyed the episode, please do share to someone or multiple people. Like, leave a comment, and definitely do subscribe and all the nice things. Bye.